Hello and welcome to Storytelling with Puck 2025. We will, as always, start with a story.
The ever-present struggle. Sobbing and a little tired, Grace slowly opened her eyes and lifted her shoulders off the messy bed, which hadn't been changed in weeks. She didn't seem to care. She practically lived there. It was pleasant and sunny outside, and so it had been all week. As for Grace, she remained immobilized. Glancing at the laundry-filled basket in the corner, her eyes shifted to the open laptop displaying her unfinished poem on it. It had been weeks. I can't believe this. I can't handle the situation anymore, she sighed. Then she looked around again. Overwhelmed, she struggled to decide where to begin. I guess I should get out of bed, she muttered, with a touch of irony. Instead, she fell back onto the mattress, sinking into the plans she'd made for the day. But then a sparkle of optimism washed over her. That day would be a little different. Within 10 minutes, she would slowly get up, do her morning yoga, and take a hot shower. And so it happened. After a mindful start to the day, she savored a delightful breakfast purchased fresh from the local bakery. What have I been missing all this time? She took a sip of her freshly brewed coffee and smiled in satisfaction. Half an hour later, it was time to engage in some writing. These pages won't write themselves. Meanwhile, the laundry rolled into the washing machine, and finally the bed sheets were changed. But there was no time to lie on them, as only half the day had passed. Rushing to her laptop, she returned to her work. Then she remembered that she had guests coming for dinner. Better get moving! And so she ran to the supermarket. For the first time in weeks, Grace would pour her mind and soul into cooking. Determined to make the evening memorable, she decided to prepare something special, a recipe that she'd been saving for months on Pinterest. Rapidly chopping and mashing ingredients, she got dinner ready in no time. Excellent! And I still have plenty of time to get my hair done. Joyfully clapped her hands. After all, Grace's hair had been as chaotic as her unmade bed. Dinner was fabulous. As the night drew to a close, Grace found herself back in her empty flat. Taking a sip of wine, she reclined on the couch, once again smiling in satisfaction. What a perfect day. Wishing that that memorable day never ended, she planned to write some more before heading to bed. Grace was about to finally finish her book, her long-awaited masterpiece after years of writing experience. But as she typed the last poem, she felt a cold drop fall on her face. That's weird. And again, and again, more and more drops of water kept falling until Grace woke up. He had forgotten he left the window open. Once again, she found herself lying in her cluttered bed, still with messy hair and unchanged clothes. As the rain started to pour, she realized that her perfect day had just been a dream. The laundry was still intact, and the open page on her laptop was still as empty as that morning. She had the urge to cry, but her face was already damp from the rain. Rising from her bed, she hastily closed the window and wiped away the rainwater from her face. The bed was soaking wet. Damn it! Well, at least now I'm out of bed, she muttered. Forced to do the laundry, she angrily tossed everything into the washing machine. After giving in to half an hour of procrastination, she decided to take a warm bath and change into a new set of pajamas, the only clean clothing she could find. Reluctantly, sitting on her chair, she anticipated another unproductive day on her laptop. Beside her, a cup of instant coffee and a slice of leftover bread. She then stared at her window. Rain was pouring hard outside. Well, it's all right. What is perfection anyway? I'm clean, the laundry is nearly done. I'm enjoying a warm beverage and I'm ready for one more workday. Just as she was about to write, she felt cold water drops running through her palms. Oh no, not again. Grace found herself daydreaming again, her sweaty hand holding a water pistol and a heavy bag of groceries in the other. She made her way through the busy street with some effort. At that moment, all she thought about was what to cook for dinner, and as she hurried to the bus stop, she seemed to forget about herself in the daily tasks. The vision of a perfect, imperfect day had faded away. But for a moment she paused again, and her gaze was drawn to a shop window, where she saw a bag, somewhat similar to the one she was carrying, only much smaller, a little luxurious, brand new. She envisioned herself carrying the bag and walking down the same street with class and distinction. But before getting into another almost lifelike daydream, her phone buzzed. Her mind drifted back to reality. She gazed again at the bag and quickly gave up her previous thoughts. She realized that the bag would never be big enough for her groceries, her constant luggage. A little rushed, Grace checked her phone. I'm running late. Before she could think, she was interrupted by a familiar voice yelling, Mum, wait! I really hope I didn't miss anything else, she sighed. That story was by Alivri, I'm going to pronounce her name incorrectly, Witenga. I hope. Thank you so much, Levy. It was a brilliant story. We really enjoyed it when we first read it, and we thought we'd give it an introduction to this year's storytelling with Puck so that people could see it. Um, so, welcome to Storytelling with Puck 2025. Janice, it's lovely to see you. How are you?
Hi, Janice.
I'm good, thank you very much. I must apologise, but I will need to leave at about 8 o'clock, so if that's all right.
Absolutely
Yeah, I'm
fine.
very glad
It's
to be
probably
here.
only going to be an hour long today, I think. Anyway,
Okay,
we've got
brilliant.
a few people watching on YouTube, but we already knew that a lot of people weren't able to turn up today, and hopefully
Sure.
can turn up next Thursday instead. But yeah, hopefully we'll still get all the stories coming across this week.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Um, so as we mentioned, this is I think we were trying to work it out the seventh year of storytelling with Puck.
6 or 7, we
6
don't
or 7.
remember anymore.
So it's been going a while, and it's probably been the least organised year, if we're honest, that we've had the very last minute
Yeah.
to get it all set up and running. But as usual, we like to share stories, and that's kind of what this whole event is about. Janice, when did you first kind of get involved with storytelling with Puck? And when I think we
I'm
met
trying to
like
remember actually, because I think you did something about write a story of 50 words or less. Whenever you
ah
did that, that's what got me started, I think.
okay.
And that's
That
going
was
back, must be 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. Well, actually, no, it's before the pandemic, probably.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was probably the first year of this.
Yeah.
Or storytelling with Puck. So you can hear since the beginning.
And I've not necessarily done it since then, but I'm pretty certain that's where I first came across you. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, and I think so. Some people keep on coming back. Some people kind of miss a year and then come back a couple of years later. And the thing is, I think we're all busy. We have busy lives and lots of other things to do, and
Sure.
so we make it when we can. But yeah, I guess the idea of tonight as well is to give everyone a bit of an introduction to kind of what the week's going to be about and how it all works. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the kind of
So
format.
this is the part of the year where we try and take our head out of the day-to-day busy life and spend maybe just a few minutes every day writing a story, or it doesn't always have to be writing. We have people who've uh, done paintings, drawings, created music, videos, so any kind of storytelling is welcome. And this year, to help you along the way, if you're a bit like me and get a lot of writer's block, we also have some prompts for every day. So if you need a little bit of help along the way, on the website storytellingwithpuck.com, you will find a prompt for every day.
I'm actually going to go through them because I think it's interesting to kind of get what people's reactions might be if anybody wants to type anything in on if they're watching on YouTube as well. Janice, to hear what you think too. So today it was they're always in threes. So we had clock tower, records player, and concert were the prompts. We by the way, I have to say these are very random, but purposefully random because I think that helps to give you a bit of a boundary and an idea. We have photo frame, computer, and teddy bear. On February the 1st, there'll be curtains, a bowl, and a bottle opener. On February the 2nd, we'll have football, and depending on where you're from in the world, that can mean different things. Theatre and tree. We then have car, tower, and arena, followed by market, carpet, and guitar. And then on the 5th of February, we have cards, pen, and a microwave. And finally, on the 6th of February, we have deodorant, river, and window. But what do you think, Janice? Are any of those things you can work with?
Funnily enough, it was the deodorant one that caught my interest for some reason. So I started putting some stuff together around that. So not sure how quickly, because I'm quite a slow writer, so I don't know how quickly I'll get something together. But it was the deodorant one that caught my eye on that for some reason.
It's weird how things just kind of get you sometimes, isn't it? You just go,
Yeah.
oh, there's no, as you said, there's no particular reason that a certain word stands out, but you just see it and go, oh. When you write, do you enjoy having some kind of boundary or some kind of I guess instrument to give you a spark and to get you started, or do you prefer like a blank canvas?
Um, I think I like to have some sort of prompt. I think some of the best stories I think have come up have been quite random and have come from a prompt. Maybe someone said, "Oh, have a look at a photo," and then maybe look at an inch of that photo. One of my favourites was "I remember when" as a prompt, and just I remember, and it's almost you get yourself into a hypnotic state. You just keep writing, and that can generate a lot of ideas. So I think I need some sort of structure and prompt. I think to get the ideas flowing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. What about you?
I'm definitely like that.
Yeah.
If I just have a blank page, nothing, I'll write like 2 lines and then that's it. I get stuck. Whereas having some prompts or last year I also did a version of Stefano wrote a story and then I wrote the same story from the point of view of a different character. Which is a little bit copycat, I have to say. But I like those sorts of things to help the writing.
Yeah, I was on a course actually.
Sorry, go on, Janice.
No, it's just because I was on a course on Saturday, and actually the person suggested doing exactly that. Write the story one way, and then write the same story from the point of view of another. So you just,
I think you call it copycat, but I think it's a form of inspiration. It's a form of it's a form of differentiation and a prompt. It's just a different version of a prompt, really, isn't it? To kind of actually see it from the other person's perspective. And I think you can also learn something from that as well, because even the writer, the way that I wrote it, was from a person who was sitting in his home's perspective. I won't go into the whole story now, but had an unsuspecting visitor. But maybe you would never think about, well, what are the thoughts of the unsuspecting visitor in this circumstance? Why are they there in the first place? You have your ideas of why they're there as the person sitting in the home, but yeah, maybe they have a completely different reason for being there. And Cyan kind of took that mantle on, and wrote it from the version of the visitor. Uh, and Alivri as well. Can't fully remember the exact version she wrote, but she then took that on last year as a third version, which I think was an outside perspective, seeing what was going on in the house from an outside perspective. I'll have to find all the stories and I can post them a bit later and show. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good way to write. By the way, there's absolutely no pressure, but I don't know if you have anything that you would like to read this evening at all as we're on the call.
I do actually. So I wasn't sure if that was, but it might be a bit long. It's about 4 or 5 minutes, so that I don't know if that's a bit long, really. But
absolutely fine. I mean, we've got so many people on here tonight that I might have to cut it down. But
yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 4 or 5 minutes is more than fine. I'm sure we'll enjoy it. Would you like to read it now, or would you like to wait for a little while? I'm very happy for you to
I
read it now
don't
if you'd
mind. I
like.
was just going to just check in if Sean is with us or I can
That's
see.
me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
oh, I see. Oh, we're leaving someone sitting there on there. I beg your pardon. I should have. Yeah. So we were leaving
No,
someone sitting there, and yeah.
clean up so we can get all the recordings and stuff done. But yes, sorry. So my partner Cyan.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you. So, yeah, whenever I don't mind actually. Yeah, I'm happy to. I will read from paper, but yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic. We'll mute ourselves so we can listen
Oh
to you
gosh.
properly.
Okay,
And
you want me to literally do it now then? Yeah.
I would like to, like I say, we can
Yeah.
also we can the story if you like, and then come back to you, or you can read right now. It's completely
I'll
up to you.
go for it now. Actually, yeah. It's yeah. Yeah. It's called Knife on a Bus. And it's actually the first story that I've written from a collection. So it's not it hasn't got anything to do with your prompts, I'm afraid. Anyway, yeah, it's written in first person and it's based on my experiences as an undergraduate engineer in the early 80s. So anyway, Knife on a Bus. With my head resting against the window, I close my eyes and make myself comfortable for the hour-long bus journey. At 7:30 on a Saturday evening, I'm sitting halfway along the top deck as we pass through All Hallows on the Grain Road to High Halstow. I barely notice the hedgerows, drainage ditches, trees, and rutted fields, all things you normally associate with living in the country. Scenery I've seen countless times before on my way to college. It is only when I hear footsteps on the stairwell at High Halstow that I bother to turn my head and watch with mild interest as a teenage boy clambers up the stairs. Assuming he will pass on by, I turn back to the window. Where are you going then? He plonks himself down in the seat in front of me. I give him a hard stare. Sorry? Who is this fool, and why is he sitting directly in front of me when the rest of the top deck is empty? Where are you going all dressed up? Enjoying a yellow phase, I am wearing a pair of yellow baggy jeans, yellow shirt, and burgundy shoes. My face is made up. Lipstick, eyeshadow, mascara, and a dusting of blusher to accentuate my cheeks. My afro is pinned at the sides. I stand out. No matter. With 2 weekend jobs, I can afford to dress as I please. Resisting the urge to roll my eyes, I answer, friends. I take a closer look at this person and judge that he's probably a year or two younger than me. I turn back to the window. What friends? I drag my head back. He is grinning at me and does not seem at all put out by my lack of engagement. I decide to adopt a polite, one-word policy. College, I tell him. You cannot be seriously trying to chat me up. You look nice, he says. Thanks. What's your name then? BJ, I tell him. That's not a proper name. I shrug and turn back to the window. I'm Colin, he tells me. Don't you want to know where I'm going? No, I say. Boo, he tells me regardless. I let out a sigh of relief. Boo is only another 10 minutes, though my relief is short-lived when he suddenly stands and walks around to sit next to me. What do you think? He nudges me, and I absently brush his elbow away, my gaze fixed on the window. He nudges me a second time, and I look down to see he has a knife in his hand. It is a Stanley knife, its short triangular blade more generally used for cutting lino. I have seen one before, but never on the top deck of a bus. My eyes travel up from the knife to his face. Very nice. I drop my one-word policy. He smiles at me. You can hold it if you like. Thank you, I tell him as he places it on my palm. I rub my thumb over the wonky X scratched onto the metallic grey handle. What's this? I ask. X marks the spot, he tells me. For what? Dunno, he shrugs. Something. I lean against the window. The knife is in my left hand with my buttock resting on top as far away from him as I can manage. Better that I'm the one holding it, especially as I would have to clamber over him to get away. Then, oddly, we sit in silence for the next 5 minutes, me and my companion. He seems cheerful enough and does not say anything else. Though my heart is hammering against my chest, I still have the knife. When the bus finally stops at Who, he holds his hand out for it, and I drop it onto his palm. His fingers close around the grey handle with a cheery, "Bye, yellow lady," and he bounds down the stairs. And I find myself waving to him as the bus pulls away. But my God, I need to get the hell out of here. That's it.
I'm not sure how to react to that. I'll let Cyan start.
You said it was inspired by your experience. Can I ask?
Yeah,
you
there is truth in that. Yeah, that is something that
the
happened.
story?
Yeah.
Wow. You really had me like in the palm of your hand. I was kind of but like, what's happening? What happens next? What's this about?
Yeah. I feel like he is a character that so many of us have seen many, many, many times before, in the sense that you cannot work out if he is properly evil or a bit strange,
Hmm.
or both. Um, and yeah, it's
Disquieting, perhaps.
Sorry, go on.
I was disquieting, perhaps. I don't know.
That's a good word. Yeah. Yeah, even listening to you describe the situation and describe the story made me feel nervous as if I was in that situation at the time. And so yeah, it's hard to imagine one person at the top of a bus, as you say. That's the yeah. Unfortunately, it's not that uncommon, is it?
No, no. Yeah, I remember because I was too lazy to walk down the stairs. So I remember making the decision. Just, oh yeah, I'll be fine. And of course, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also you shouldn't have to.
No, I
That's
should. No. But yeah, it's
yeah.
part. I think yeah, as a woman, you kind of have to risk assess, I think, and manage your and be aware of your environment, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's horrible that you have to do that, but unfortunately, it's reality, isn't it? I think so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for giving me that space. I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you reading it. It's really, really powerful.
Beautifully told as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really, really well written. So, on that note, is the next story lighter? No, it's great actually. I think that's one of the special things about this week is we actively encourage, as you know, we actively encourage many, many different types of stories as well. So we can have conversations about very, very serious moments, and also conversations about the one that always comes to mind. I think I mention this every year. So Nicola is now famous, Nicola Richardson, but just writing about missing out on a brownie in a cafe. I feel like that's the other end of the spectrum, kind of the light-hearted story, but then yeah, many, many very serious moments as well.
Yeah.
But shall we move to Cyan having a read?
Yeah, so this one we were talking earlier about different prompts and what inspires writing. So this was written a couple of years ago as part of a workshop we did in storytelling with Puck. So it was written by Viv Parry. And I think the kind of prompts where you were given a few characters with some descriptions, and everyone then had to come up with a story of finding a way to put all of these characters together in 20 or 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah, they were in a lift. They were so the idea was they were all in a lift. And then, as you say, yes.
Yeah.
And then
Why were they in the lift
four
together?
characters? Yeah, and everything else was left up to the imagination. It's great because this is one of the stories, but we had maybe 6 or 7 stories, I think, that came off the back of it, and they were all completely different.
Yes, the beauty of storytelling.
Yes. Okay. Over to you, Sam.
It was breakfast time. Normally, the lift would glide smoothly down and pour its occupants into the glittering splendor of the marbled reception area. Of course, on the day that Max had somehow become separated from his parents, it wasn't happening that way. The alarm stopped ringing. The adults in the lift looked at each other with mock nonchalance. Max was trying to work out how he could look at himself. If only he had grown a bit more since his 8th birthday. The lift's mirrors only started at his head height. He had spent most of the time since he got dressed staring at his reflection in the hotel room mirror. He was particularly proud of his look, the fake moustache forming the final flourish to his gangster outfit. He had spiked up his hair and his green eyes glittered with mischief. He looked at the little lady standing opposite from him and wondered if she too was struggling to see herself. He noticed that her eyes were the same color as his and looked into them deeply. She smiled and at the same time gently pushed back a few strands of her short black hair behind her ear. "What's your name?" she said, looking back at Max. "Max," he muttered, down to his shoes, feeling a bit less bold now she was talking to him. "My name's Sangeetha," she said, smiling again. "Oh," Max said. He looked at her again and she smiled. Her warmth reminded him of his granny and he felt a little bolder. "My granny is coming today," he said. "It's her birthday." "She's 64. "Oh," said Sangeetha. "How lovely. I'm 65. Suddenly there was a sharp intake of breath from the corner of the lift. Now that the eerie silence of the lift had been broken by the chat, the large man in the corner cleared his throat, stroked his beard, and fixed his piercing blue eyes on Sangeetha. She gazed back at him, noticing how shiny his bald head was, and wondering if he polished it before making his way to breakfast. "Should we call for help?" he said. "Oh, no, I'm sure everything will be fine," Sangeetha replied, nodding her head gently. "I'm not so sure," said the man. "That was an alarm that was just ringing," he said, getting a little pink in the face. "Maybe there's a fire." "Now, let's just calm down there. Jim," he said. "My name's Jim." However, at the mention of fire, the young girl standing in the opposite corner of the lift suddenly looked as though she might faint. Her long blonde hair was falling in front of her face as her head dropped down. Her tall, elegant body seemed to be crumpling. Then, bang, she dropped to the floor. Sangeetha knelt in front of her and helped her up to a comfortable seated position. "Just keep breathing," she said, as she looked deeply into her dark brown eyes. "You see," said Jim, "I told you we should get help. In all my 45 years on this planet, I have never come across such a strange attitude as yours," he said, glaring down at Sangeetha. Max tried to look away, but couldn't take his eyes off the man's face, which was getting redder and redder. It looked like a balloon that might pop at any minute. Bing! Bing! They all turned to face the doors, as with a gentle swoosh, they slid away from each other. A tall, uniformed receptionist stepped forwards to hold the doors as Sangeetha helped the girl back to her feet. "Are you okay, Miss Alessander?" she said. "Yes, I'm fine now," she said. "Just panicked, that's all." "Of course, it's only to be expected." "I'm sorry to have inconvenienced you all," he continued. "Just a minor electrical fault. All fixed now, nothing to worry about." "Would you like to come to breakfast with me, dear?" Sangeetha said to Alessandra. "Oh, that would be lovely," replied Alessandra. "Thank you so much. I know I'm supposed to be an adult now. I'm 21, but I don't always feel ready to be." "That's absolutely fine," Sangeetha said, as she caught hold of the girl's elbow and they walked slowly towards the restaurant. Jim coughed, his face still red, but now glowing as small beads of sweat appeared. "I'm ready for my breakfast," he said, and shuffled away. The receptionist crouched down. "Your mum and dad are at their usual table," he said to Max. "Do you want me to come with you?" Too late. Max had already spun past the receptionist and was off running joyfully towards the restaurant. "Great disguise," the receptionist said, looking towards the disappearing tiny form.
I do love that story. Thank you very, very much, Viv Parry.
Mm.
He definitely knows how to put pen to paper.
So with just a few prompts, you get a
Yeah, I love that idea of people being stuck in a lift. And I love the idea of the young boy being in there because you wouldn't normally see them on their own. So that I thought that just gave it a little bit of an extra twist for me, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting how people combined the relationships because we didn't give anything about. Oh wait, I think we gave name, age. I can't remember what else. It was very, very few
couple of
bits of
features like facial
information.
features or
Yeah,
something about how they looked that you also had to get into the story.
yeah, but nothing about relationships. So it could have been that maybe one of them was his mum if you decided to make it that way. But as you see, Viv didn't. Actually, I don't think anybody did. So we all decided that Max was a young boy and he was by himself for some reason in the
Yeah.
lift. So yeah. Maybe we're not doing a workshop this year, but maybe next year we'll reintroduce it because I think it did go. People enjoyed having that little bit of space to write. Would it be something you would enjoy taking part
Oh
in? Do you think?
yes, I do. I quite often take short courses here, there, just to freshen up the writing and just get some fresh ideas and new perspectives. So yeah, it's something I would be potentially interested in. Yeah. Was this something you did as part of an organisation or just open to the public?
It was open to the public, but it was
Oh, I
again,
see.
it was for storytelling with pups. I think it was last year, or maybe yeah, it was last year or 2 years ago. I can't actually remember, but we decided to introduce that element to it. We had a little bit more time to be able to do that, whereas this year we have a little bit less time, so we've gone back to simplicity of just setting it up as people posted their stories. But it was a nice idea, and I think we gave people 45 minutes to write within the workshop. So that Viv came up with that story
Yeah.
within 45.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But I think time pressure is actually. I know. I understand you were saying earlier that you like to write slowly and come up with kind of ideas, and I am the same usually. But time pressure sometimes gives you a different aspect that you don't go back and rewrite and edit everything and try and change everything. Instead, you kind of go, well, I might have messed it up, but it's too late because I've got to finish this story. You just keep on writing until you get to the end. So there's something about that I think that helps.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that probably makes sense. No, I think you're probably right, actually. Yeah, yeah. Or
I
at least
was
get the
going,
bare bones, and then you can work on it. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So what's your kind of writing process normally when you are writing? Do you have a methodology?
I'm not sure that I do really, to be honest. I mean, I've been working on this one project for a number of years. So that's kind of kept me quite busy on the writing front. And I post on LinkedIn fairly regularly and I have a couple of blogs. So I think I'm a bit, perhaps in some respects, a bit random with my ideas. And I just go with what kind of pops up and what has a life of its own. Sometimes when I'm writing, I find it almost takes on a life of its own. And that's what I then follow, actually. So I don't know if that is the same for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely for me, I think I definitely go down that road when I'm writing fiction, especially and when I'm writing um, more for pleasure. If I'm writing for a client, sometimes it can be a different thing. I have to have some kind of organization. I need to know exactly what the goal is, etc. But yeah, if I'm writing for myself, like how if I write it for myself, then yeah, it can be a different story. I like to do what you do, and sometimes just ideas just pop into my head. I'm like, right, let's just flow and see what comes out. What about you?
Yeah, I think well, as I said, I kind of need a prompt or something to help me get started, and then I just let it flow. But I'm very much a person that, this is because I haven't developed the craft enough, but I can write a scene, but I'm really bad at developing a story.
Mm.
So I can do like individual pieces, but making it into like a novel or something would be my worst nightmare. So maybe
Yeah.
that could be a future endeavor. But for now, I'll stick to the very short stories.
That makes a lot of
How,
sense to me,
sorry.
actually. Yeah. So I kind of recognize the way I write, I tend to see the scenes and I can write the scenes, and then I struggle sometimes to link them up together. So that's really interesting. Anyway,
I'm
sorry, what were you going to say?
very
Yeah.
like, I'm really into the details and explaining a scene and how it feels and everything. And I've always been like that. And this is, well, I think I've always been like this. So I remember when I was at school, and I think I was 8 or 9, and we got told, okay, this afternoon you have to. We were studying the potato famine at school because I grew up in Ireland, and we had to write a story of a family in Ireland emigrating to America, and you had like 2 hours to do it. At the end of the 2 hours, my family hadn't left their house yet because I was describing they'd said goodbye to every family member and what did they eat for dinner. Everybody else was in America and built their new life. Mine hadn't left the house. So I haven't changed, clearly.
Do that though. I think actually developing those scenes it can be really, really important. You can procrastinate too much, I think. That's not you specifically. I mean, people can procrastinate too much and then not get writing, not actually get a story complete because, as you say, every single little detail needs to be done. But also, I think people can miss key details sometimes if they're not doing. So yeah, it's yeah.
That was
It's
making
an
me smile, actually, that story, because you reminded me that when I was younger, I used to get caught up in this story and then I'd get bored and then I'd just suddenly kill off my characters because that was the quickest way to finish the story. So I do remember doing that as well.
particular way of killing them off, or was it just random?
It tends to be just random from what I can remember, but yeah, I'd get into a lot of the detail, and then at some point I just think, oh, I just want to get this over and done with, and then it would, I'd just kill them off.
Wow, that is incredible. Sorry, Carol. I know that you said there's your video. The lighting is a bit off. Can you hear us? Can you speak?
Yeah, the sound works fine.
So yeah, because I just saw in the chat as well that you were talking about the story of Max. Carol was in the workshop, Janice, with us. Carol also wrote a story in the workshop, but Carol actually did something a little bit different, and I feel like rather than me talking all the time, Carol can explain what her take on the workshop was and Max a few years ago.
Yeah, it was just as ChatGPT was being opened up for researchers, and I took that prompt and got it to the point where I thought I'm just going to plug the prompt into ChatGPT, see what happens while I write. So I wrote a 45-minute version. ChatGPT turned something round in less than 5 minutes, which we then contrasted, and I stuck both up on LinkedIn at the time, so people can go and see it there, and do the comparison themselves. I wouldn't like to do it today. I think the AI tools have got considerably better at understanding how to mix the flow of 2 or 3 character perspectives. They're still not perfect and you can still see the holes in them, but they can write short stories. But at the time, it was obvious that it would write about Max and then it would write about Jim, whereas the human authors were melding these 4 characters into a story. And that's quite a different spin. And then our most beloved people who are gloriously hosting this decided to agree to work with me a little bit about an educational paper for other storytellers about how we did that and what it felt like to be on the inside of that experiment. So that was quite good fun.
Good fun. And you're right. I think Chat GPT. I can't even say it. And as you say, it's not just them anymore. But the AI has evolved I'm still not convinced it can write a story quite as well, a fictional story quite as well as a human. I think it misses nuance, it misses real perspective, it misses actually being in particular situations. But yes, it would be much, much harder to tell, I think, if, and this is key, if you had somebody who knows how to put in the right prompts. It makes such a big difference. I think if you have somebody who doesn't know what prompts to give to ChatGPT, ChatGPT doesn't know what to write because it bases it off the questions you ask it. Maybe I'm wrong, Carol. You know way more about this than I do, but
that's exactly right. It's even with all the data points it now handles, it still is within a box. It still only knows what the humans have told it. It has some perspective on emotions because somewhere in there are medical bodies of knowledge about human emotions, because you can get it to be a counselor, you can get it to be a psychologist. Not perfect, but it can do some of those things. It has never experienced these things, so that's outside of its box. But there are improvements happening. I haven't looked at the new Chinese one yet. There's plenty of other things in life rather than look at all the AI tools available. But my understanding is that type of tool and that generation of tool will focus on things like knowing which domain it needs to look at. And therefore, it might be better at storytelling if it's trained on how to storytell, and then told you this is how you structure a story and weave things together, and this is how you use language, and go over to another domain for your information to plug in about character, and another domain to plug in your information about setting. So it's within its capability, but you need the prompts. You need to know how to shape what it does. And
you have to learn how
the human is the key bit at the moment, but as the following generations start to teach themselves, that may change too.
Maybe, yeah. There's something you said earlier which I find interesting, and I guess there's almost a scientific question into what feelings are. But you mentioned earlier about the fact that it doesn't experience these things. It experiences what other people have written about all of these things, and then I think, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the learning model works in a way that it gets tested on what would you put next, and then it goes, okay, that was an error, I got that wrong, until it kind of gets on the right thing that it's meant to be writing the right thing, but the best option that it's meant to be writing, and then it kind of gets a tick, and it's almost like rewarding the dog in dog training, and then it goes, okay, I'll go on to the next question. But to me, if I were thinking about a human's process, that would all be thinking. If we were doing that process to try and teach ourselves rather than to try and teach AI, that's all about thinking. Whereas to me, feeling and experiencing something, so actually being in an atmosphere, being at a party maybe, and the adrenaline rush that you might get when your favorite song comes on, or if you see somebody across the dance floor and all of that kind of stuff, somebody can describe how they felt about that, but it would be completely different to the way that I felt about that, and Cyan felt about that, and you and Janice felt about it. And I think maybe that's where, and I don't know how long this will last, but that's where humans still have an advantage. Is that AI, depending on your scientific understanding of what feelings are, but AI can't feel.
And I think I agree with you. It's the human connection. And one of the things I'm aware of is, since the pandemic, a lot of us now spend a lot of time not with other humans physically. So the physicality of being there is quite different. And I've been doing virtual teams since the 1990s. My hair is grey rather than blonde, really. But that means that I know the difference between meeting someone face to face and meeting someone remotely through electronic means.
Yeah.
And the relationship building is different.
Yeah.
And somehow we need to recognize that, yes, we've onboarded all sorts of new staff around the world electronically using Zoom or something similar. But that doesn't mean to say we've really made those connections. And the sort of old startups where everybody was in somebody's spare bedroom and building proper relationships that sustained the business through a difficult time, might find that doesn't happen anymore.
Very good point. That's a very, very good point. There's a friend of the of storytelling with Puck, Andrew Thorpe, who I definitely think you know, Carol. I'm not sure if you know Janice, but he has really recently started something called the connection equation, I think he calls it. And the idea is it's something along the lines of, he's going to kill me for getting this wrong, but I think it's engage plus, what did I say it was? Engage plus connection equals x squared. It's obviously not an actual formula, because the x squared is just a sense of joy, a sense of everybody getting something from the situation. I think he added the squared because it's everybody rather than just don't mathematically test it. It won't work. But what he's trying to do, and he's getting a few people involved, is to try and get people to form those human relationships again, because I think you're completely right, Carol, that they are starting to go missing. And yes, we can. I think this is brilliant. What we're doing right now is amazing, and I think we are building relationships over Zoom. And I only know you guys on Zoom. I've never met you anywhere else, and I do feel that you can still build a nice, strong relationship. But there is something to, at the very least, having a video on and talking to each other rather than, you know, just sending a message over chat or something like that, which, as you say, I think sometimes takes away that human equation, that human connection. And so his idea is just to get more and more people to be aware of it. It's not any kind of business model or anything behind it. It's just be aware and maybe think about the next time there's an opportunity to go and network with someone, that you actually go and network and talk to them, you know, about life, not just about, hi, I'm John, I own this business and I want to make loads of money out of you. That kind of idea. So yeah, you're definitely right. There's something to the idea of it could go missing if we're not careful, and we need to find a way to stop it.
And it's one of those things that because they're doing more research in how the body works and how the vagus nerve works and how the neurons in the head work and all the other things around human bodies, there's some science behind it as well, in that we're physical people, and that's sort of what proves this isn't the Matrix, which is a brilliant story. But
yeah, you've just given me some inspiration now.
Matrix. All right.
Yeah, exactly. That's everyone's prompt for tomorrow now. James, do you have any kind of ideas or thoughts? I'm sure you have some thoughts, but that you also would like to share on AI and kind of how that affects relationships already. Any other tangents?
No, it's really interesting actually, because I put something on LinkedIn. Actually, I found 2 articles related to precisely to what you were saying, Carol. One was about a woman who was using it as a sort of counselling. She couldn't get hold of a therapist, so she was using it, using ChatGPT as a sort of quasi therapist counsellor. And she said, while she recognised it wasn't as good, it wasn't completely rubbish either, actually. So, and she would do that again. And the other one was late. Oh, sorry.
Enough when you can't get your therapist.
When
it's
exactly
good enough to get you
good
to
enough.
the day,
When yeah,
next
exactly.
week,
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. So we've already got to that point, I think. The other one was actually interesting about creative writing, which again, I found this article on Medium. Can't remember. I think the writer was Linda Carroll, I think. And she put, again, what you were saying about prompts, she put some really detailed prompts in. And actually, what she got back, she asked it to write a couple of stories and a poem. And what came back, I thought was actually pretty good. And then she put it through these other programs that can tell the difference between AI and human. And most of them didn't pick up that they were completely AI generated. So I was always under the impression that I could tell the difference in terms of creative writing between AI and human. But this kind of shook me a little bit seeing this article, I must admit.
I think, yeah, as you say, and as Carol said earlier, it's definitely getting better, especially if you have somebody who puts in the right prompts. It is definitely getting better. Also, though, what I would say is some of those detectors are not very good. The detectors are actually not as good as the AI itself. I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that quite a few of the detectors, if you put a blog article through them and you have M dashes within your blog article, they will pick it up as AI. But M dashes are a very, very, very valid part of grammar. It's very odd that it goes it's AI, but it's because some people were overusing M dashes for too long, and then that's what many AI tools learn off. But it's not that it's guaranteed to be AI. It's just that humans maybe use M dashes slightly better, or worse, actually.
Or worse. One of the problems I was finding when I was teaching, I don't teach creative writing. I teach engineering and management when I'm teaching.
Okay.
Was that we were running things through an AI checker, and we were picking up the things that humans had written and then run through a grammar checker because it was too perfect.
Yeah.
And it was missing the ones that obviously were from ChatGPT, because there's one or two phrases that ChatGPT uses when it's being friendly and opening up its first chat on something, and they just copied and pasted them straight in. So I can spot those by eye, but the checker for AI couldn't.
I think that tells you a lot. But at the same time, with the creative writing side, and Janice, you were looking at those stories, and you said that it would be hard to tell if you didn't know previously, it would be hard to tell.
I was quite surprised actually. Yeah,
Okay.
especially by the poetry. That maybe someone else could, but
Well, yeah, who knows? Again, I think as we've all said, it's going to get better. It's going to become harder and harder to tell. I hope that the right regulation is put in place to make it so that if you are writing things and you are creating, that you have the copyright over that material. But that's a whole different conversation to have, I guess. Well, but we should probably save that for a different topic, a different time.
But hopefully we can use AI to do things that humans don't want to do. We can spend our time being more creative. That would be the ideal scenario.
Yeah, indeed. So, Janice, I know you said you needed to go in a few minutes. And Carol, before Janice goes, would you like to read to the group anything or to share a story? You don't have to, by the way. There's no pressure. I just wanted to.
I have to admit, this week has been a bit busy. I haven't written anything yet.
It's only day one. It's only day one. Yes. Until about 4 or 5 hours ago, I hadn't written anything, and this is the event that I set up. So you're absolutely fine. Don't worry.
That's why we have daily prompts.
Yes. Well, in that case, Janice, do you have anything else you would like to read before you head off?
no, I'm fine, thank you. I appreciate the time I've had. So no, that's great for me. Thank you. And I apologise because I just didn't get a chance to write anything for your prompts. So this was an old story, but yeah.
Honestly, there's no pressure. There's nothing to apologise for at all. I think that is hopefully one of the key aspects of this week is that we do things at our own time when we can, and if we want to share and we have an opportunity to, then we do, and if we don't, then we just sit back and enjoy what everyone else does, and that's the idea behind the week. So okay, fantastic. In that case, Son, did you want to have a read of another story, and then maybe do you have a couple of minutes, Janice, to listen to another story?
Literally,
Or?
yeah, a couple of minutes first. If there's one coming, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Which one we do? My one or your most recent one?
Oh, I could read if you okay. I'll read one, and then Sam can read one at the end. Sorry, I have to find it. Where did I put it? There it is. This is called Delay. Some of you may have already seen it on the newsletter, but I'll read it anyway. The minute hand caressed the furthest right dial of the watch face. The hour hand yanked the dial in the opposite direction. The analog face displayed 9:15. Exactly 9:15. Exactly 5 minutes later than the smiling, white-haired, trimmed, ginger-beard, winking giant of a man should have arrived. Exactly 5 minutes later than the correct departure time, according to every timetable, from the digital display at the bus stop to the printed A4 sheet folded neatly into Mandy's handbag, to the phone that claimed to be smarter than any human. Mandy hopped on the bus with her usual zest, singing a hello to our man Jim as she tapped her card on the faded writing of the futuristic travel portal. I still remember when cash was king, you know, Jim would snort. What were days, those? Conversations were king too. Me too, Jim. Me too. Let's at least keep the conversation going, Mandy would prattle. Hey, Jim, you know you're 5 minutes late again, don't you? Mandy would wink and the two old friends would burst into laughter. One day at 9:15, a slender man, probably in his late 30s, stormed through the mechanical door in front of Mandy. You know what time it is? He screamed. Do you know what this means? Millions you could cost me, you fat old clown. Millions, I'll have your head. Mandy watched the steam dissipate as the man's ears stopped whistling and gave Jim a reassuring look. They'd seen the likes of the Minuteman a billion times before. I still remember when cash. The next morning, Mandy checked her watch, as usual, just as the minute hand met a right angle with the second hand. She looked up at the empty space where the big red bus belonged. No bus. No Jim. No way home. Of course, she couldn't leave the house before 9:10 to walk the 4 minutes to the bus stop, where the only bus from that village left each day, because Milton would be alone. Jessica had no way of arriving before 9:10 because she had to drop the kids off at school first. She couldn't afford to ask anyone else to do it, and there was no family. Milton might have been okay, but what if? What if that was the day that he forgot that his legs weren't as strong as they used to be and he fell? What if he choked on his own saliva or vomit? What if he simply fell asleep forever with no one to hold his hand? Or did any of that matter? The Minuteman wouldn't miss another meeting, at least until the bus that now departed at exactly 9:10 stopped running at all. Um,
I did read
yeah, so
that. That just reminded me. I had read that on the thing, so thank you.
It's interesting how when you read it, sometimes you can read it in your voice, not the author's. And that one is beautiful in that it talks about social cohesion and justice in a way that isn't preachy at all. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't remember what inspired it because I actually wrote it in a while ago. But I think I don't know. I saw something, and sometimes things annoy me, and that's a great inspiration for writing because I have no other means of acting. So I just write it down angrily.
I think that's the power of storytelling, though. You can get a point across without hammering someone over the head with it. I think that's what I heard you saying, Carol. Mm.
We also have a bus that runs 5 minutes early on a Sunday. So maybe that's the background. Every Sunday we're like, oh, getting the bus, you need to go early.
Yeah, maybe
So
that wasn't.
maybe our bus driver has some friends on the way.
Yeah. We do always find it a bit strange. We're used to buses being late, but this particular bus is always early and always leaves before the scheduled time, which I imagine frustrates a lot of people. But yeah, I think you always have to remember there could be reasons for things that you are unaware of. And so yeah. So anyway, that was that. Janice, are you having to head off?
Is there? I'm happy to wait for one more story if there's one. Deanne, did
Okay.
I? Yeah. Genuinely, yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, and then I'll
Okay,
shoot off after that.
Okay, no, fantastic. Yeah, no, we can definitely read through one more story. I think after that Carol, sorry, I know you weren't able to be here for the whole time, but I think we're gonna leave it for this evening, and then we'll catch up next Thursday for another Zoom call. Are you guys around next Thursday evening at all?
I
Not
believe
sure.
so. I was listening on YouTube though, so I
Excellent,
haven't missed
fantastic.
anything.
Oh, that's good. I'm pleased. I also understand, by the way, because when people can't make it on time, because again, as I said earlier, lives. we, we all need different ones, and so we all have things to do. But no, it's lovely that you were able to listen in. But yeah, if you guys are around next week, that would be wonderful. Hopefully, a few more people will join as well, and we can get even more stories shared, and we'll have some of the stories from the week as well to put into next week's Zoom. But I'll let Cyan read this final story, and then we'll have a quick goodbye. Thank you.
So this is the one we were actually talking about earlier, where I wrote the other version of Stefano's story last year. So thanks for joining tonight. We will, as always, end on a story. The door made a creaking sound. Creeping towards the front door, my shoes were squeaking with every step. My numb fingers fumbled at the first lock. It twisted open. The second took more force. I pulled the door. It didn't budge. There was a third lock. Who has so many goddamn locks on a door? Who would break into a dump like this anyway? Finally, the door was freed. I opened it as gently as I could, a rush of chilled air hitting my body. I flung myself out into the night, running, my body flailing, slipping on the snow, my borrowed, untied shoes, at least one size too large, my limbs numbing with every step. Despite my frantic movements, my thoughts slowed down, as if the world had stopped turning. The tulip heads bent over, as if bowing to me under the weight of the fresh snow. Snow in March. What was the world coming to? Slipping once again, I could feel my body sliding off the footpath. I didn't try to stop it, leaving it instead to collide with the nearest hedge. Now covered in a mixture of hedge leaves and snow, I looked up. Number 86. I'd never been here or seen who lived here. So overgrown was the garden you couldn't see inside the house. It was perfect. I found myself banging on the front door. A slightly perturbed looking guy answered as I pushed past him, not even stopping to ask if I could come in. I put myself in the far end of the sofa, as far away from where I could tell he'd been sitting from the look of the debris strewn around. I focused on controlling my breath and winced in pain as heat found its way back to my body. He said something to me, but my mind was in too much of a blur to reply. He returned to the spot he'd been standing, with beers in hand. I found myself involuntarily reaching out to accept one. We sat and stood there in silence for the longest time. If he found it weird that I'd just arrived, he didn't say anything. In fact, he could barely look at me, never mind speak to me. Fair enough, really. When it was time, I stood up and walked past him, slipping on a coat hanging by the door, and stepped back out into the night.